Well, hi everyone, this is Don Smith and welcome to this week's video blog. Is actually based off a question I put out amongst my social media last week and across my last blog, basically saying, hey, you know what, I'm running out of ideas and I want you guys to help me out. And out of that came quite a few emails. And so I kind of tried to narrow down into a grouping some of your questions for this video. And we really got a lot of great topics, and I appreciate everybody that wrote in. And we will be addressing some other topics as we go through the next month, because I've got some really cool stuff to talk about now. So one of the ones that I saw as a repeating pattern was involving night photography. How do I process my night photography? There was a lot of questions about noise reduction and then a lot of questions about sharpening. And I think we can roll all three of those into this video using a selection of 3 shots that I've got here. And this is going to be kind of on the fly for me, so you're going to sort of see me thinking out my workflow. I don't really have anything planned here. I haven't done a dry run as I've done in other videos. So not to say I'm winging it, but in a sense I am. It's just the way I think about night photography. I'm going to talk to you about how I capture and then how I process and then how I deal with noise issues, which I think it's very important. If you're new to night photography, we try to deal with the noise right up front, right off the get-go. And I'm going to show you a couple different ways of doing it. And I'll give you my preferences. There's really 2 fantastic ways. And then we're going to get in, I've been getting lately a lot of questions about sharpening. So I'm going to get into discussing sharpening, and that comes at the end of the process once the image has been sized out to whatever format you're going to put it out to, be it a web picture or a print or a big enlargement, whatever. That's when you come in and do your sharpening. So let's break this up first of all and just talk about the 3 pictures I'm going to work with today on this video. And the first one, I actually went back on purpose and picked something out prior to me becoming a Sony Artisan. It wasn't until 2016 that I can tell you exactly. It was in September 2016 when I picked up my very first A7R camera. And I was smitten by it, to say the least. I can remember I used it on a workshop up in Wyoming at Grand Teton National Park. And about 6 months later, fortunately, through I guess a meeting of certain people, I was offered a chance to become a Sony Artisan, and it has been fantastic. And I've loved the relationship with Sony, and to see how the Sony lineup of camera and lenses have developed over the years has been a lot of fun for me. So this was captured back in 2015 on a workshop with Gary Hart that he taught up in and still teaches up in the Eastern Sierra. And one of them is we go up into the old growth bristlecone pine forests, and we do a night shoot. And we thought we were going to get clouded out on this night, but as you can see, we got a bit of the Milky Way and also some broken clouds and 2 of some of the oldest ancient bristlecone pines that are up in that area. It's really a beautiful area if you've never been up there. So this is the first image I'm going to take a look at. And let's come on over here to the second image. This was captured in 2019. Now this was with a Sony, I believe this was with my A7R4. I'll go back and we can check the metadata once we get it opened in the Photoshop. It was either an A7R3 or an A7R4, and this was the first time I had ever really witnessed and photographed the Northern Lights. And this was in Iceland on a scouting trip in 2019 with Gary Hart. And we met up with a fantastic guide in Iceland. I want to give him a shout out. His name is Ole Hocker. And what I love about Ole, he'll tell you exactly what's on his mind. No ifs, ands, or buts. I appreciate that about people. I think the three of us just had a fantastic whatever we were there 7, 8, 9 days. I can't remember how long we scouted, and this was really kind of towards the end of the scouting trip that we got 2 back-to-back nights with the Northern Lights. And then the last one, I'm going to take a look at another bit of a Milky Way shot, not a straight Milky Way, but a little bit right up in here, and Jupiter that was out. And this was actually a shot Gary Hart planned for us on our New Zealand workshop last year. And unfortunately, we've had to put this year's New Zealand workshop on hold due to the virus outbreak. And it was obviously the right call to do that. So those are the 3 images that we're going to be working on. I'm going to get back into grid mode here, and I'm going to highlight all 3 of these. And I'm going to first talk about noise reduction, okay? Now, there are 2 products out on the market. The first one that I've been with quite a long time, and I'm going to open it up as I'm talking. So I've highlighted all 3 images. I'm going to come in to plug in extras here in Lightroom, and I'm going to come to DxO PhotoLab 3. Now, DxO PhotoLab 3 has in their noise reduction right over here, they give you a fast and they give you a prime. And the prime is really the reason I started with these guys. They had written an algorithm that was unlike anything that was out on the market. And I just stayed with this program. I unfortunately don't have an affiliate with them. I don't believe they have an affiliate program. I've written them a few times. They said they're working on it. So I can't offer any kind of a discount at this point. And I've still stayed with them. We're up to version 3, and the algorithm keeps getting better and better and better. And as I said, noise reduction is something you want to do in your night shots on the front end. And these were all shot at ISOs of either 1600, 6400, and 3200. So it gave me a good representation of what this can do. I can tell you this works on images as high as 12,800, at least coming off the Sony a7R IV. I did not select a shot on that. Maybe I should have. But this is just to kind of give you an overview of how I do it. So the first thing I do is I'm going to work on all 3 of these just by, I'm not going to actually set any white or black points or do any localized adjustments. You certainly can. This is a full-bore raw processor if you want to get into it. But the majority of my clients are Lightroom based, so I tend to like to stay with Lightroom. But this is a fantastic piece of software. And by the way, you can see here it now works with the Nik collection filters. I have it embedded. So if I want to jump into the Nik filters right from this program, I can do that also. They purchased the Nik filters from Google a couple of years back. And they are improving them. They are working on them and adding new filters in there. So it's kind of a nice software. Now, I'm not going to run this through on all 3 photos and make you sit through it. I will do it independently, and then we'll jump back into the video. But the way you would do it is I have this picture up, and you would click here, Export to Application. And by the way, when you download this program, if you do purchase it, they will have a little filter that's actually an export-import filter that works in conjunction with Lightroom and a couple of other programs out there, depending on what browser program you are working with. And it simply allows you to open up, in this case, out of Lightroom, and you can see here I want to export it back to Lightroom. Now, people always ask me, are you exporting back the RAW? No, because you never actually work on a RAW file, so you have to keep that in mind. You never, ever, ever can touch the RAW file. It has to be exported out as something. So what I export it out as is a TIFF file in 16-bit. I just leave it at 300 ppi. I'm not resizing it. This is all by default here. Bicubic interpolation I find works the best. And I just keep it RGB. Profile, I actually only get the choice of sRGB or Adobe RGB right now. I'm not worrying about that because that's a wide enough gamut when I get back into Lightroom and then eventually into Photoshop. and on into some of the third-party programs I'm going to show you, that's fine. So I'm just going to click export. You can see that little icon of a picture jumps right down to here, and when this taskbar opens up, it will route me back into Lightroom, and I will just click add, and we're off and running. So that's how we do it, and we'll meet up again once these 3 pictures have been processed through DxO. Okay, so we've gone through the prime noise reduction stage in DxO PhotoLab 3, and I had mentioned earlier on in the video that there's another product that I really like, and that one is Topaz AI Sharpener. That has just come out recently, I would say within the last 3-4 months, and it's fantastic. Now, I get asked all the time, what do you like better, the Topaz Sharpener AI or the DxO PhotoLab 3? And it's a hard question to answer, because there have been certain frames that I have tried with one software and it worked better than the other. So I really think you're safe going with either software, and I can tell you I really see an improvement dramatically coming along with Topaz AI denoise. I think I said sharpener, excuse me. They do have a sharpener out, and I am going to talk about that later in the video, but I want to correct myself and say denoise. Again, I think the key is if you're using Topaz AI denoise, or if you're using the PhotoLab DxO3 prime noise reduction, just make sure you're using it in the first step. So another thing I want to point out, as it routes back in, it's got to be what I said, we had to save it as a TIFF. So here is the original RAW file. ARW is Sony's designation for a RAW file. And here's the TIFF file coming in. There may have been some processing that went on that I didn't know about there. This is the raw file of the lagoon and the aurora borealis in Iceland, and there is the denoise, and you can't, to the naked eye, I'm going to blow these up in just a moment. Here is the raw file from New Zealand of Jupiter and a little bit of the Milky Way and some clouds over Lake Pukaki, and here is the denoise file. So let's start back now, because we do want to check the noise, and I'm going to blow this up 100%, maybe even a little bit more. Well, we'll just come up 100%. This is a small file, so this isn't going to raise up as much as the next one. Really hard to see the difference in this one. I want to go over and check the ISO, and 6400. So we will, what we're going to do is we're going to open these all up in Photoshop, and we will really blow them up and take quite a look at them. Here's the next one. This is the one of the aurora borealis, and that one I think you can see an immediate improvement in noise. And the last one here, you can see the files are getting bigger because of the camera size. This was definitely on the A7R4, and here's what the noise cleaned out. But I think for these other files, because they were shot on lesser megapixel cameras, the best way to really study these is let's go ahead and open them all up. Now, I'm not going to do any Lightroom adjustments right now. I can work with Adobe Camera Raw here inside of Photoshop. I just simply want to stay on track here. What I wanted to show you real quickly before we leave the topic of noise reduction, because I know this is a big topic for a lot of you. Let's go into Topaz Denoise AI. And I just want to open it up because they did, they continually upgrade the interfaces of both this program and the sharpener, which I'm going to show you. And this is how this program would work. You simply open it up, and I just like using it basically in the auto mode. It's going through an analysis of the photo right now. I would not double noise reduction a file. I think it makes it too pasty. So I would advise against that. I'm just opening this up to show you what it looks like. If you don't like the results, you can always, you have sliders to remove more noise, enhance sharpness, and recover some details. But I can tell you, using this product over and over, that really just 99% of my images, I can just let the algorithm go through and figure it out. It does a far better job than. Okay, now with the noise dealt with, the second step I want to do is actually do what I call some tonal corrections in the image. And I'm going to simply, I used the Tony Kuiper panel. This is a whole nother video, well, multiple videos for another day. But what his panel allows me to do is come right into Adobe Camera Raw, which is basically your develop module in Lightroom. And all I'm going to do is hold the Alt or Option key, and you can see when I click it, the background goes white. I just want to get as many of these stars coming up as I possibly can. So I'm shifting that white point all the way over. And then I'm going to check my black point. And yeah, we do have a little bit of blacks in that shot. I can open up the shadows a tad. And really, other than that, I would go in and I would set my lens profile. But because I use DxO optics, it actually imparts a lens profile in there. So if you try to do it once you come back into Lightroom, you're going to see that you don't have that option. It'll just say none. So just click OK. And we'll come over to the next one. I'll kind of speed this up a little. Go into Adobe Camera Raw. I'm going to try to see where I can pull more of these stars up without blowing out the aurora. And that might be a little too much right in there. And I'm going to back down the blacks just a little bit and take the highlights down. Okay, so now I've got a pretty good histogram going here with a lot of stars, and I'm going to click OK on that. And then I'm going to come over to this guy at New Zealand at Lake Pukaki, and I'm also going to bring up some of the stars here. These lights right back in here are actually part of Queenstown, where we start and end the workshop. And by the way, we're going to be running that workshop again in 2021, so check on the dates. Again, I've got too much of highlights going on here, so I'm going to back this down. And now it's starting to look pretty good. Now, one thing I can do is come back through in all of these. If you don't have Luminar 4, which is where I'm going to go next, and you can bump in some clarity here. I just think the clarity slider in Luminar and the textures and how it brings out details are far superior than what I'm getting out of Lightroom or Adobe Camera Raw, which is the same thing. That's just my opinion, agree or disagree. So I'm going to click OK, and now we're set for all three of these images to go into Luminar and start to process out the final image here. All right, let's go ahead and open up these images into one of my favorite third-party programs, and there's really good ones out there. Topaz is making incredible stuff. On1 is making incredible stuff. I have affiliations with all of these companies. I just needed to pick one of these to really kind of show you a way that you can work on them and do this kind of quickly. One of the things I like doing, especially in Luminar, is utilizing the landscape presets. And this landscape enhancer, I really like. It's a one-click button that really adds a lot to the image. Here's before, and in one click, that's what it's doing to my image. We'll do a split screen here to show you, and let me get it back to out of that mode. And then you have 4 modules over here. I've done a lot of videos on Luminar, so I'm not going to go through all of these. One of the ones in night photography, and this is now, everything from here forward is not an absolute. This is on a per image basis. I would take a look at the structure, and you can see how much more dramatically than a clarity slider in Adobe Camera Raw that brings that up. There's also detail enhancers in here for small details. And you can see if I rack that all the way over what it's doing. And I suggest doing this. I've always said with these sliders, always kind of tug and pull and see what they're doing. And it looks like a little bit of medium details could work to bring the stars out a little more. How much of the stars you want to bring out, that's really on you. This, I think, has done a good job. Now, some people really talk about the night sky and the colors of the night sky. I can tell you our eyes could not see the red in these clouds, but this was a shot done after sunset, and there's still color. The sun was setting back over the mountain in that direction that our camera sensors, and especially these Sony sensors, which are amazing, could record that our eyes could not see. So the other thing is people are, kind of concerned about, and I'm trying to find while I'm talking, here it is. If your sky is looking too blue at night, I think there's two schools of thought. I used to be of the thought that I liked my sky very kind of bluish psychologically. It gave the feel of night, and I'm still kind of there, but I don't do it quite as much. But you can go too much in the other direction too. So that is really kind of a subjective thing that each of you has to kind of figure out what looks right, what doesn't. And I'm going to go ahead and hit apply on this one because we got a couple more images to work on here. So really, that's just kind of your judgment call as to what you want to do. We'll let this one process out, and let's take our shot here of the Aurora Borealis, and we will take this into Luminar. Now, having said this also, there is just a ton of different ways to process night images. There's no one right or wrong way. Just Google processing night images out on the web. I can only show you what I kind of like and what's working for me, and that's kind of easy. I always like to kind of keep things simple as possible. Again, I just clicked on the landscape enhancer. Each one of these little presets comes with a opacity slider, so you can slide in as little or as much as you like. I'm going to kind of speed this one up. Let's take a look at on this one. I want to just try the sky enhancer and just see what it does. And it's not going to let me get in there on that one. Okay, something's gone haywire here. I apologize. That should have been lit up here, but that for some reason is not allowing me to get in there. Let's take a look at another one here. I want to stay in this category, and sometimes I will take a look at dehaze. In this instance, it doesn't really seem to want to be working. So like I said, in each one of these, you have to have some kind of go-to tool. So I'm going to come back into the details enhancer, go into the small details. Nah, I'm not really liking that. So this is sort of seat of the pants when you're processing this stuff. It seems like the medium details to me is working the best. A little bit in there. Okay, we can apply that one. This was the one shot on the A7R III camera, so the previous iteration of the current Sony camera that's on the market. Now let's go back. I want to check what camera this was from 2015 that I was shooting at. And this is actually the A7. This is the A7S version 1. This was the very first camera. So this was a Sony camera. This was before I was an Artisan. This is so I wasn't quite sure when I made the conversion over from Canon. So let's go ahead and we'll put this one through Luminar and see what we can do. Also, you can go back into Adobe Camera Raw and you can tweak the color settings. Like this looks a little too blue, obviously, to me, but I'm going to show you how I correct it inside of here. So again, AI Enhancer, I think that sky is much too blue, although it looks pretty natural back over in here. Look at how just that one click brought up foliage and the detail in the trees. That to me is pretty amazing, really. I mean, I got to give these guys credit that are designing this software. That's in one click. And let's get out of that mode and just go back there, you know. So I'm going to come over to the Pro tab this time. I'm going to come up to Color Enhancer, and where it says Split Color Warmth, this is where I'm going to take some of this blue out of the shot, right there. Now, that's one way you can do it. You have basically the same if you came up under the Essentials panel and went to Light. This is almost exactly what you're going to see in Lightroom, other than they have thrown in this Smart Contrast filter. And no, that is definitely not working for this shot. Just thought I'd tug on it and see what happens. So let's come back under here to details. We already know that medium is looking pretty good. And I really don't think any of these are going to apply. We can try dehaze. I do try dehaze on certain images. It's not really doing anything on that image. Okay, so that's how I'm really kind of fine-tuning these images. Now, there's a lot of debate, and again, this is a personal preference, as to how much this foreground should light up, because people will say, well, that's not natural looking to the eye. Again, it's all a subjective call, so you can process your images any way you want. Now, the last thing I want to do is sharpen, and here's the filter I'm going to now. Let's come down to Topaz. Here's my Sharpen AI that I mentioned way back at the beginning of this video erroneously. Here's where I would apply it. We're at the final stage. Whatever output I'm going to do, generally you got a couple of different ways. Now, this module has been updated quite a bit over the last couple of weeks. Those of you that own this filter know that you've been receiving a lot of updates from Topaz. And one of the things they've actually added is this masking brush that works pretty well. I've used it on a couple of images yesterday, but that's going to have to be a video for another day. So you can come in here. By default, it'll open up to Sharpen. If you think you had a stabilization effect, you could click here. If you think you had a focusing issue, you could click there. If you're not sure, you could click in Auto. I can basically tell you, just leaving it at its basic settings and letting the algorithm once again do its thing. Let me process this out. It just seems to know where to go in and find the edges, similar to a high pass filter that we used to use in Photoshop, and where the softness should be left alone. And here it can even find the edges of the stars. So let's just bring this up quite a bit. Here's the Camera Raw filter applied, here's Luminar applied, and here's Sharpener applied. Okay, let's go through that one more time so you can see it. Opened up as Raw, Camera Raw filter, we've run it through Luminar, and we've run it through Sharpener. Let's come over to our next image here, and let's go up, oops, excuse me. And I really don't think this image needs sharpening, but what the heck, we're going to do it anyway, because the algorithm knows what to leave alone and what to sharpen. So maybe it's finding something in the image or around those stars that can make them a little bit sharper, that I would like in the final version of this. You can see it's processing through this shot pretty quickly. So that's telling me it doesn't have a whole lot to look for sharpening. You'll see sometimes it'll slow down, and that will tell you that it's finding quite a bit. So let's bring this up, especially in the sky. Let's go back to the raw, okay? And then Adobe Camera Raw, where we set our base highlights and shadow point, and then into Luminar 4, and then into Sharpener, and pretty cool. Last one, the one of Lake Pukaki. And let's come back here and run this one through Topaz. And we are going to come into our Sharpener once again. I don't think this one needs a lot of sharpening. Again, you look back on those mountains called the Remarkables. We will see. Let's hit apply. No, now you see this one's going a little bit slower. So that's telling me up in the sky, which these stars do look a little softer to my eye now that I blow it up. This is up at 100%. And this is with the Sony A7R4, remember. So this is a quite a large file. And again, these are all at 16-bit. I haven't even converted these back yet to 8-bit. I would do that on basically on output, but I just left them at 16-bit to show you that this program can run in either or. And the question would come up at this point, well, does it matter if I sharpen at 16 or matter if I sharpen at 8? Probably at 8 if that's your final output, but honestly, having worked with this for so long, I can't really tell a difference. So let's go back and open up the RAW. We ran it through the RAW Adobe Camera RAW processor, applied Luminar to it, and then my sharpening. So that's it, gang. That's my workflow, kind of a long one to stick with, but with everybody homebound and Easter weekend, hopefully you've made it to the end, and I've answered 3 big questions that I got. And like I said, I really appreciate the questions that are coming in. And don't hesitate, if you like what you're seeing here and you've got an idea for a video blog or a blog you'd like me to write, send it in. I still have quite a few topics, so if your topic didn't get covered in this one, it'll get covered in another video down the line. So until next week, I'd like to wish you all a very happy and safe Easter. Be with your loved ones, cherish this time that we're all kind of homebound and stuck. And if you have any questions about any of this that you've seen here, don't hesitate to give me a holler. You can write me at don@donsmithphotography.com and send your blog ideas. I'd be happy to do some in the future. Maybe your idea will be one we will cover here. So until next time, everybody have a fantastic weekend. Take care.